Under the canopy of the Bodhi tree, I sat in silence, burdened by unrequited feelings for someone I cherished. The Buddha, calm and radiant, gazed upon me with infinite compassion, sensing my inner turmoil without a single word. "Why do you grieve so deeply over what has not been given to you?" he asked gently, breaking the quiet. I hesitated, my voice trembling, as I confessed, "I have given my heart to someone who does not love me in return." The Buddha nodded slowly, as though he had heard this sorrow countless times before. Timeless in its universality, this ache you carry, like a heavy stone, is not caused by love itself but by your clinging to it. Confused, I looked to him and asked, "How can something so beautiful as love bring such unbearable pain to my soul?" The Buddha gestured to the earth beneath us, where a fragile flower grew between the roots of the tree. "Observe this flower," he said. "It blooms freely, unconcerned with whether it is admired or unnoticed." I stared at the flower, its delicate petals trembling in the breeze, as though it held a secret I could not see. Fulfillment is not found in possessions, nor in the praise of others, nor in the pursuit of fleeting pleasures, he continued. True fulfillment arises from within, when one recognizes the impermanence of desire and the boundless potential of the present moment. I thought of my unreturned affections, a yearning so deep that it consumed me, leaving no room for peace. But if I do not yearn for love, then what meaning remains in life? Is love not essential? I asked, seeking clarity. Love is a gift, not a possession, the Buddha said, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon, where the sun began its descent. He continued, "When you love with the desire to hold, you seek to bind the infinite with the finite." His words pierced through my doubts, illuminating the root of my suffering. Though I struggled to let go of my longing. "What should I do, Blessed One?" I asked, desperate for a path away from this ceaseless ache. "To love truly is to release," the Buddha said, his tone both firm and tender, as though unveiling a profound truth. "Release?" I echoed, the concept foreign to a heart that had clung so tightly to its desires. The Buddha picked up a handful of earth, holding it loosely in his palm as he continued to speak. "If I clutch this earth tightly, it will slip through my fingers and scatter," he said, demonstrating the truth in his words. He then opened his hand, letting the earth rest freely, its grains glistening in the sunlight. "But when I hold it gently, it remains with me." Such is the way of love. A revelation began to dawn within me. Though it felt like a distant star I could barely comprehend. The man winced at the parallel, his heart aching with the recognition of his own failings. The Buddha continued, his words flowing like a clear stream. "It is not hope that binds you, but the belief that love must come in a specific form," he said. His words were like a mirror reflecting my attachments, showing me the shadows of my desires that I had not seen before. The beggar declined, saying, "I do not desire your riches, for I am already rich in contentment," the Buddha revealed. The king realized that his sorrow was born not of his possessions but of his relentless craving for more. "Will this pain ever leave me, Blessed One?" I asked, tears welling in my eyes as the weight of sorrow pressed down. "Pain arises when we resist impermanence," the Buddha said, his tone unwavering yet gentle. He added, "Allow the impermanent to be as it is, and suffering will no longer take root in your heart." I struggled to imagine life free from the ache that had become my constant companion, like an unwelcome shadow. "But how do I live without love?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, as though afraid of the answer. "You do not live without love," the Buddha said, his gaze like a beacon of light piercing through my darkness. "You live with love that flows freely, unburdened by the chains of expectation or the need to possess." His words were simple, yet they carried a depth I knew would take a lifetime to fully understand. The Buddha's disciples nodded in agreement, their faith in the teachings unwavering, their hearts anchored in the truth. Cultivate gratitude for what you already possess: the air you breathe, the love that surrounds you, the simplicity of existence, the Buddha advised. You are not alone in your suffering, he said. Countless beings have walked this path, and many have found peace. I looked up at him, finding solace in his words and the boundless wisdom that emanated from his being. How do I begin to walk this path, Blessed One? I asked, seeking guidance to step into the unknown. Begin by observing your feelings, he said. See them as passing clouds, not as your eternal sky. His metaphor lingered in my mind, painting a picture of a vast sky untouched by the storms that passed through it. But what if the clouds never part? I asked, fearing that my sorrow would become a permanent fixture in my heart. The Buddha smiled, his expression serene and filled with infinite patience. Even the darkest clouds cannot obscure the sun forever, he said. The light of awareness dispels all shadows. I took a deep breath, his words offering a glimmer of hope, though the journey ahead still seemed daunting. Thank you, Blessed One, I said, bowing low before him, feeling a spark of gratitude amidst my sorrow. The Buddha raised his hand in blessing, his presence like the stillness of a lake reflecting the infinite sky. Go, and let the flower of your heart bloom without clinging, he said, his voice resonating like a temple bell. I rose, the weight of my sorrow not entirely lifted, but now accompanied by a sense of purpose. Under the Bodhi tree, the Buddha sat, his gaze fixed on the horizon, his thoughts turned to the impermanence of all things. In the stillness, his teachings echoed, a reminder to all who sought the truth within themselves. And though the person I loved remained as distant as the stars, the space within me began to grow. Each day, I returned to the flower beneath the Bodhi tree, watching it bloom and fade with the seasons. His heart felt lighter yet troubled, lingering doubts clouding his thoughts despite the clarity shared by the Blessed One. Determined to seek guidance, he approached the Buddha once more. The Buddha greeted Anandapa with a gentle nod, his serenity undisturbed by the transient complexities of the world. Anandapa bowed deeply, his voice trembling as he said, Blessed One, I still struggle to free myself from the chains of seeking approval. The path was not easy, but it was illuminated by the light of his wisdom. Another day, another gathering of disciples under the shade of the Bodhi tree, where the Buddha offered his timeless wisdom. I joined the circle, still grappling with the teachings from our last encounter. Seeking further guidance and clarity, the Buddha sat silently, his presence radiating peace, as though the universe itself had paused to listen. One disciple spoke, her voice hesitant yet earnest. Blessed One, why is it so difficult to let go of attachments? The Buddha looked at her with compassion, his gaze steady and knowing, as though he saw the roots of her suffering. Attachments arise from our ignorance of impermanence, he said. We grasp at what is fleeting, hoping it will bring lasting joy. I listened intently, my own struggles mirrored in her question, and my heart stirred by the simplicity of his words. But if we let go of everything, she continued, does life not become empty, devoid of meaning and connection? The Buddha smiled gently, as though anticipating her fear, and spoke with the clarity of a still pond. Detachment is not emptiness, he said. It is freedom from the illusion that impermanent things can give permanent happiness. He gestured to the stream that flowed nearby, its waters glistening in the sunlight, ever in motion yet serene. Consider this stream, he said. It flows freely, unburdened by the rocks it passes. Yet it nourishes all in its path. The prince, humbled by the sage's wisdom, realized that his quest for greatness was fueled by an insatiable craving, the Buddha said. He returned to his kingdom with a changed heart, dedicating his life to serving others. finding joy in their welfare. You must first see attachment for what it is, he said. A chain that binds the heart to suffering. He continued, observe your feelings without judgment. Like a traveler observing the changing landscapes along a journey. Neither clinging nor rejecting. I reflected on his words. The imagery painting a path I yearned to follow, yet feared to take. The Buddha turned to me, his eyes meeting mine with a depth that seemed to pierce through my doubts and fears. You have struggled with this before, he said, his tone neither accusing nor dismissive, but inviting me to speak. Cultivate humility, the Buddha advised, for a humble heart is a fertile ground for the seeds of noble action. He added, practice generosity, not as a means to gain but as a way to release the chains of self-centeredness. His words struck a chord within me, as though he had articulated the unspoken shadow that haunted my every thought. But what if the loss leaves an emptiness that cannot be filled? I asked, my voice trembling with vulnerability. Emptiness is not to be feared, the Buddha said. It is the space where new understanding and freedom can take root. He picked up a handful of sand, holding it loosely, as he often did to illustrate his teachings. If I cling to this sand, it slips away, he said, letting the grains fall slowly to the ground. He opened his hand, showing the few grains that remained, and continued, when I hold it lightly, it stays. The simplicity of his demonstration resonated deeply, its truth undeniable, yet I felt the challenge of living by such wisdom. Another disciple asked, does detachment mean we must not care for anything or anyone at all? The Buddha shook his head, his expression both patient and firm, as he addressed the misconception directly. Detachment is not indifference, he said. It is caring without clinging. Loving without the need to possess or control. He gestured to the trees that surrounded us, their branches heavy with blossoms that would soon fall to the ground. The trees offer their shade, their fruit, their blossoms, and yet they do not grieve when the seasons change, he said. His words painted a picture of harmony and acceptance, a way of being that felt both foreign and deeply natural. The Buddha's compassionate eyes met hers, and he gestured for her to sit, inviting her to share her pain. Grief is a powerful force, he said softly, but it holds the potential for transformation, if you allow it to guide you. The Buddha watched him depart, his gaze fixed on the horizon. His thoughts turned to the impermanence of all things. The world rested, cradled in the profound peace of his wisdom. Do not judge your feelings, he continued. Allow them to arise and pass, like clouds moving across the sky. His voice was steady, as though he spoke from a place beyond time, where all truths converged into one. But what if the feelings are too strong, overwhelming like a storm that cannot be weathered? I asked. The lotus flower and the young tree became symbols of his quest for liberation, guiding him to rise above the illusions of external validation. As the sun set, Anandapa bowed to the earth, his gratitude flowing outward, his resolve unwavering. Patience and awareness are the keys to enduring and transforming your suffering. He placed his hand on his heart, a gesture that seemed to connect the transient with the eternal. Within you is a stillness that cannot be shaken, a space untouched by the storms of the mind, he said. His words offered a glimpse of hope, a reminder that the peace I sought was not outside but within, waiting to be uncovered. Another disciple asked, Master, is it wrong to feel pain when we lose what we love? Pain is not wrong, the Buddha said. It is a natural response to change and loss. But it need not become suffering. He continued, suffering arises when we resist the pain, when we cling to the belief that it should not exist. His distinction between pain and suffering illuminated a path I had not seen before, a way to face life's challenges with grace. I felt a shift within me, a quiet awakening to the possibility of living without the chains of attachment. Blessed One, I said, your teachings are like the light of the sun, revealing the path I could not see. The disciples nodded solemnly, understanding the truth embedded in the monk's simple yet profound words. Their hearts stirred by the story's resonance. The widow began to let go, piece by piece, her burden lightening as she embraced the impermanence of her possessions. The Buddha said, each step you take, no matter how small, brings you closer to freedom. His encouragement filled me with a sense of purpose, a resolve to face my inner struggles with courage and faith. The gathering ended, and I left the Bodhi tree with a heart lighter than it had been in years. Each day, I practiced observing my attachments, as the Buddha had taught, and slowly, the chains began to loosen. The woman's heart quivered as she listened, her anguish beginning to dissolve, replaced by the faint flicker of understanding. Master, she asked, how can I begin to release this pain that feels so entwined with my being? The Buddha replied, start by observing your grief without judgment, allowing it to flow without resistance or denial. Another day, another quiet moment under the Bodhi tree, where the Buddha sat surrounded by his attentive disciples. I joined the gathering, still grappling with attachment and its roots, seeking clarity and the light of wisdom. Cultivate gratitude for the love you shared, for it is a treasure that exists beyond the boundaries of time. The Buddha advised, practice compassion for others who mourn, for in giving comfort, you will find solace in your own heart. The Buddha added, Blessed One, he began, bowing low, this bowl brought me joy, but now it is shattered, and I am filled with anguish. The Buddha regarded the disciple with compassion, his gaze steady and filled with understanding of human suffering. It is not the bowl that has caused your suffering, Buddha said, his voice serene as a flowing stream, but your attachment to it. The disciple frowned, his grief palpable, as he asked, how can I not mourn something that brought me joy but is now lost forever? The Buddha gestured to the bowl, shards glinting in the sunlight. Consider when this bowl was whole, he said. Did you not know it would one day break, as all things must? The disciple hesitated, reflecting on the inevitability of impermanence, a truth he had avoided facing until now. In the tranquility of the garden, the Buddha's presence remained, a beacon of wisdom and compassion for all who sought it. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video. Attachment creates the illusion that joy can be secured by holding tightly to what we cherish. The Buddha said. He picked up a fallen leaf, its edges crisp and delicate, holding it lightly in his palm. This leaf, fragile and temporary, does not grieve its impermanence. Yet it exists fully in each moment, he said. The disciples listened intently, the depth of his teachings resonating like the chime of a temple bell in the still air. Master, another disciple asked, why do we cling so tightly to what we love, even knowing it will one day be gone? The Buddha turned to him, his gaze like a beacon illuminating the path to understanding. You cling because you believe that possession will shield you from suffering, he said, but clinging invites suffering to remain. His words carried the weight of countless lives lived in ignorance of impermanence, lives bound by the chains of attachment. I try to help others when I can, though it feels small. Even the smallest actions reflect the light within you, Buddha replied. Begin by understanding that attachment arises from ignorance and fear, he said. Fear of loss, fear of change, fear of the unknown. He continued, these fears cloud your vision, obscuring the truth of impermanence and interconnectedness. I watched as the disciple grappled with these truths, his expression a reflection of the inner storm swirling within. Ahead, the river sang a gentle melody, its voice weaving through the trees, guiding my thoughts toward unknown destinations. I followed. Face your fears with awareness and patience, he said. Do not resist them, but observe them as clouds passing across the sky. His metaphor lingered, painting a picture of acceptance and the transience of all emotions, whether joyful or painful. Master, another disciple asked, does letting go mean we must abandon all love and connection? The Buddha shook his head, his expression filled with infinite patience and clarity as he addressed the misconception. Letting go does not mean abandoning love, he said. It means loving freely, without chains of expectation or possession. He gestured to the birds perched on the branches above, their songs filling the air with harmony. These birds sing, yet their songs do not cling to the trees or the wind, he said. Their melodies flow freely. His words painted a picture of love without attachment, a way of being that felt both liberating and elusive. How do we practice such love, Blessed One? I asked, seeking a path to embody his teachings. The Buddha turned to me, his gaze meeting mine with a depth that seemed to hold all the truths of the universe. Begin by loving without the need to possess, he said. Give freely, and receive with gratitude, without clinging to what is given. I watched the water's journey, weaving through stones and roots, its persistence undiminished by the ever-changing terrain. I breathed deeply. The pain of loss arises when you resist change, clinging to what has already begun to fade, he said. He added, to see impermanence clearly is to find peace within change, to flow like the stream that nourishes all it touches. His words offered a vision of acceptance that felt both profound and attainable, though the journey was one of courage and patience. Blessed One, I said, your teachings bring clarity, yet the path ahead still feels daunting. Silence endured briefly. To trust the flow, you must release the anchor of fear, he continued, his gaze unwavering yet gentle as he spoke. Walk with patience and humility, for the journey itself is the destination. His encouragement filled the air with a sense of purpose and hope. As the gathering ended, the disciples bowed low before the Buddha, their hearts lighter with the wisdom they had received. I left the Bodhi tree, the light of his teachings guiding each step I took, illuminating the path ahead. Each day, I practiced observing my attachments, learning to love freely and accept the impermanence of all things. The journey was long, and the challenges were many, but the Buddha's words remained a steady guide in the darkness. Slowly, the chains of attachment began to loosen, revealing the peace that lay hidden within the stillness of my heart. And though the path stretched far into the distance, I walked it with faith, knowing freedom awaited. Ananda closed his eyes for a moment, imagining his life as a melody and feeling the potential for harmony within it. Buddha, Ananda said, your teachings light my path, but I know this journey is mine to walk and embrace fully. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.